Afternoon, everybody. This presentation will be recorded and posted to the Toledo Prism website. I will send a link to the recording along with links to the resources that I mentioned during the presentation in an email. Like I said, my name is Robert Smith. I'm the Terrestrial Restoration and Resiliency Coordinator for Toledo Prism. The Urban Forest Sustainability Initiative is a program that Toledo Prism introduced last year. It's designed to assist urban communities with maintaining and increasing urban forest resilience to invasive pests, pathogens, and climate change. To avoid any confusion when I refer to urban forest, I mean all the trees found in a village or city. Because some people just think it's the ones on the sidewalk. That's not how I'm defining it. It's all the trees within that urban community. This presentation is based on Toledo Prism's Urban Forest Sustainability Guide, which goes into more detail than I have time to talk about today. If you're interested in reading the guide, it can be found on the Toledo Prism Urban Forest website. And the link for the web page will be in the follow-up email I mentioned. So let's get straight to the point. What can this program offer Canton? Well, we have an Urban Forest Sustainability Guide that was created with the help of many people, including some state foresters from the New York State Urban and Community Forestry Program. This guide outlines techniques that urban foresters can use to increase urban forest resiliency. We have a presentation about the program, which you're currently attending. We have urban forest resources on the Toledo Prism website, so you can use those. And we also offer $5,000 in reimbursement for purchase of non-invasive trees. We define the non-invasive trees as those not listed on IMAP invasives, which is a website and an invasive species management program that is managed by the New York Natural Heritage Program. So if they don't list it as being invasive or they're monitoring it for invasiveness, you can purchase that tree and or as many of those trees you want for up to $5,000, we will reimburse you for. We also are available to answer questions, attend meetings, and give presentations on invasive species and urban forest related topics. Just to backtrack a little bit for those that aren't that familiar with Toledo Prism, we assist a 5-county region in managing invasive species. That doesn't mean we manage the invasive species for all 5 counties. We certainly don't have resources for all that. We do directly manage the invasives in certain areas of the 5 counties. In other areas, like private homes and all that, you can send us emails, call us, and we'll answer your questions. If you have a group that wants a presentation on a particular invasive species, it's like send us an email, call us, and we'll see what we can do about providing you with that presentation. So in addition to what I list here, we also can do things like, if you have questions about emerald ash borer, you want a presentation on emerald ash borer, we can arrange for that. The agenda of my presentation consists of the benefits of the urban forest, urban forest sustainability, urban forest resiliency plan, and pocket parks. All right, there are many benefits that urban forests provide to the community. And these are some, and I'm not going to go into big detail because that would be all day endeavor, because urban forest provides that many benefits. They improve air quality. Trees remove pollutants such as ozone, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and particulate matter, from the atmosphere. So they improve air quality. They also reduce greenhouse gases by sequestering carbon from CO2 in the atmosphere into their tissues, and also by reducing fossil fuel-based energy that would have been used for heating or cooling if it wasn't for the trees providing benefits in those areas. Urban communities, the urban forest provides a really big benefit. In the US alone, there's an estimated 5.5 billion trees that sequester approximately 28.2 million tons of carbon each year. So the urban forests are a big deal when it comes to reducing greenhouse gases. They also, our urban forests also reduce stormwater runoff by capturing water along their leaves, stems, and trunks. Planting of trees over impervious surfaces can reduce surface runoff by up to 20%. Roots can further reduce the runoff by breaking up compacted soil, allowing for more water infiltration. This capturing of stormwater by trees and other plants is part of what is referred to as green infrastructure, and has been found to reduce the cost of creating more gray infrastructure, such as gutters, drains, piping, and collection systems. So more green infrastructure equals less gray infrastructure. Urban forests reduce heating, cooling expenses. Heat absorbing structures such as pavement, concrete, bricks, and other construction materials tend to make urban areas warmer than rural areas. This is an effect that's called the urban heat island. Trees in urban communities can reduce this heat island effect by providing shade and through evapotranspiration. They've been found to reduce air temperatures during the peak of summer by 2 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit. And they can save up to 56% on annual air conditioning costs. Urban forests can also improve aesthetics and property values. Trees and landscapes our trees add landscape variation through different colors, textures, forms, and densities. They also distract the eye from less attractive features such as parking areas or walls, highways. Having trees and other vegetation on a residential property has been found to add up to 37% to its value. And last but not least, they provide food and shelter for wildlife within urban areas. Parts of trees, like leaves, buds, fruits, wood, are used by many types of animals as a food source. In addition, many of these animals use trees for building nests and shelter. Trees adjacent to rivers and streams in urban areas help maintain the water temperatures suitable for aquatic animals. And they provide fallen debris and roots for the use as food and hiding places for those animals. All of these great benefits I just mentioned are dependent on the health of the urban forest. So sustaining a healthy forest will sustain these benefits. All right. As a lead into my next section, I wanted to talk a little bit about some past history of planting in urban areas during the 20th century. During the early 20th century, the American elm was planted in large numbers throughout urban areas. By the 1930s, these communities ran into a problem. And that problem involved an invasive pathogen known as Dutch elm disease. This disease had started to kill off the elm trees that were planted in these communities. And by the 1970s, 40 million elm trees had died. Years, after these trees died, many of these trees in the Midwest and Northeast were replaced by maples and ashes. So they went from planting too many of one tree, basically, to planting too many of two trees. And we move forward into the 2002. Emerald ash borer is discovered in southeastern Michigan. It has since killed tens of millions of ash trees across 30 states. The take-home message from this history is that repeating poor management decisions creates the same problems, and that dead and dying trees can't provide the urban forest benefits that I've talked about. And while replacing these trees can return these benefits, it's costly, and it's going to take a lot of time, perhaps decades, for these trees to reach the benefits that the previous trees that were there before were providing. So the Urban Forest Sustainability Program is really about helping communities avoid the mistakes of the past by offering techniques that will minimize tree losses to invasive pests and pathogens, and it will sustain those benefits associated with these urban trees. To retain a sustainable urban forest, certain basic components should be considered for inclusion in a community's urban forest program. I'm sure you have some of these, but I'm just going to go over each and every one of them. Establishing a tree ordinance and tree board. This is important because they provide the legal authorities for communities to conduct forestry programs and guide the management of community trees. Urban Forest Management Plan, also referred to as a tree management plan. This includes conducting a tree inventory, compiling and analyzing tree inventory data, and establishing the work plan and expenses required for pruning, fertilizing, tree planting, and tree removals. Urban Forest Resiliency Plan. This is a new plan. This is a new addition to urban forest programs that was written into the Urban Forest Sustainability Guide. And it basically picks up where many tree management plans stop or are incomplete when it comes to urban forest sustainability. Most of the remainder of my presentation will discuss this plan. Tree City USA. This is a program that provides direction, technical assistance, public attention, and national recognition for urban communities, and is sponsored by the Arbor Day Foundation in cooperation with the USDA's Forest Service and the New York State DEC Urban and Community Forestry Program. The Relief Program. This is a partnership of professional DEC urban foresters with community members and offers classes in site and tree selection, planting, and maintenance. Community science education and outreach. Community science is more commonly known to people as citizen science. I know most of y'all here is citizen science, but it's also known as community science. This is community members getting involved with their urban forest programs, and it allows them to contribute their talents and perform urban forest skills that they can acquire through webinars, in-person classes, and field-based workshops. So it's getting your community involved. It's that volunteer network. Works great. I've been to a couple of the plantings in Watertown, and they really utilize that strength of theirs in the form of volunteer network. So they put that, they get somebody out there to demonstrate how to properly plant a tree, have little areas that are dug out with the trees next to them, and then send teams out and plant them. So using the community science is an awesome way to develop a sustainable urban forest program. And last I want to talk about is pocket parks. What's a pocket park? Well, they're small. They're usually less than a quarter acre in size. They're open space in an urban area that serves much the same purpose and function as a park. And they provide similar social, economic, environmental benefits to areas that were previously basically serving no purpose. You see these more often in large cities, but they can be established in smaller urban areas. And that's why I bring it up, and I'll go into a little bit more detail at the end of the presentation. So what is an urban forest resiliency plan? It is a proactive strategy for urban forest resilience to invasive pest pathogens and climate change. The main components of the resiliency plan are the urban forest resiliency assessment and maintaining urban forest health. The urban forest resiliency assessment considers urban forest risks to invasive pests, pathogens, and climate change, the responses to those risks, and the cost of those risks. It's basically a way to determine the level of damage that may occur if a certain pest or pathogen arrives in your community, and how climate change will affect your urban forest. It allows you to compare different responses and the costs associated with those responses. This assessment is a proactive approach, not a reactive approach to management. And so it avoids all the panic that sometimes is associated with the arrival of a new invasive species to your community. Moving on to the next one, maintaining urban forest health. It considers resiliency techniques such as right tree, right place, which is basically matching urban conditions with tree suitability, since healthy trees are resilient trees. And also strategies for urban forest resilience to invasive pests and pathogens and to climate change. So basically resiliency assessment plus forest health equals the forest health, our urban forest resiliency plan. So what are the risks to consider? With invasive pests and pathogens, the risks include the current ones for the Scleroprism region, like emerald ash borer or hemlock woolly adelgid, that target ashes and hemlocks respectively. And invasive pests that may be in the area in the future, like spotted lanternfly, which is creeping up from the south. It targets fruit trees, grapevines, and other hardwoods, or the Asian longhorn beetle that targets many species of hardwoods, including birches, elms, horse chestnuts, maples, sycamores, willows. With climate change, temperatures are predicted to increase, with greater winter precipitation and longer summer droughts. And this will have a negative impact on many northern and boreal tree species. So we need to determine which of our trees are going to do well and which ones are going to do poorly. One source I'll mention right here, and I'll mention it later, is that I found is by the USDA Forest Service Climate Change Atlas. We can see a picture of in the lower left. It provides a rating for climate change adaptability for each tree species. It's really worth taking a look at. The risks that you just determined, and I just mentioned, should be documented in a spreadsheet. So there are a database program, and they should include the trees that are present in your urban forest, the invasive pests and pathogens that will or may affect them, and the climate adaptability of each of these tree species. The responses to these risks should also be determined. And these can include many different things: tree removal and replacement, pesticides, fungicide applications, maybe a combination of both. But whatever the response will be, a cost for each response should be considered. In addition, the cost of lost ecosystem services should be calculated. There's a software product out there that you may be familiar with, iTree, and it has a benefit analysis tool that can help you figure out the value of the ecosystem services that your trees are performing. The results of your assessment can also be summarized into a resiliency assessment report. And that report can be used by village or city officials as an information and decision-making tool. So it lets your village know these are the things that are out there that are coming our way, and come up with a plan, a strategy, maybe a budget there that makes it less painful when that invasive species actually comes to your town. All right, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but having a resiliency assessment is a proactive approach to dealing with invasive pests, pathogens, and climate change. And the big advantage with using a proactive approach is that it mitigates the risk through advanced planning and funding that decreases the financial strain associated with a reactive approach. And this is kind of a side effect of doing the study of there and knowing what trees you have and their vulnerabilities, is that it decreases the number of vulnerable tree species that a community plants. So if you know that a certain invasive is likely to come to your area in the near future, you probably won't plant or won't purchase and plant the trees that would be vulnerable to that invasive species. So that decrease in purchasing those trees further decreases the financial impact from those pest pathogens and climate change. All right, my next slides are about the urban forest health component of the plan and focus on strategies to increase resiliency in the urban forest. The first of these is what I call right tree, right place. The focus with this is to carefully match the planting location with a suitable tree species. This increases the likelihood that the tree will be healthy. And as I said before, healthy trees are more resilient trees. To do this, one must consider that each tree species grows best in the conditions they are adapted to. So environmental factors such as soil type, pH, salinity, shade tolerance, cold hardiness, moisture levels, growing spaces at each planting site, they must be matched with the appropriate tree species there. Otherwise, that tree species is not going to do well. The next urban forest health strategy is increasing resilience to invasive pests and pathogens. This strategy involves increasing species diversity in your urban forest, which decreases the chances that a single invasive species will seriously damage your forest. For example, if most of your urban forest consisted of ash trees, emerald ash borer would take down most of your urban forest and the benefits that those trees are providing with them. But if you had a very diverse urban forest, ash trees are only going to make up a small percentage of your urban forest. So really, it's like they're not going to have, their EAB is going to have very little impact on your urban forest, and you're going to retain those benefits that I mentioned earlier. You know, increasing age diversity balances this. They're all, you know, it's also something recommended because it balances the strengths that trees exhibit at different stages of life, and it limits the number of aging, more susceptible trees. So you don't want a whole bunch of trees all in the same age group because they're all going to tend to die. They're at least by species, they're going to start dying out, you know, in great numbers at the same time. So you want a diversity of ages. Take-home message is more diversity equals more resilience. Selecting less vulnerable tree species. Another way of putting this is to avoid those species that have current invasive pests and pathogen problems, or will likely have problems in the near future. That is, don't plant hemlocks, because you know they have hemlock woolly adelgid. You know, it's currently located down in Oswego County, and it's creeping up, and it will eventually make its way to St. Lawrence County. So it's not a good idea to plant. Butternut. Butternut's had a big problem with butternut canker. So you want to avoid planting certain trees and, you know, and plant other trees that don't have these vulnerabilities. One source I found to help with this was a study published in Global Ecology and Conservation by Potter and others. It lists many trees according to their vulnerability to known invasive pests and pathogens. And last, and located first on the slide, but is have an early detection rapid response team. The easiest and most cost-effective way of managing invasive pests and pathogens is to catch them early, eradicate them quickly. You know, if you have them in the area for a long time, the longer you have them there, the harder they are to get rid of, the more they're more costly they are to attempt to get rid of, and the less likely you could ever get rid of them. So you want to be you want to have that early detection and rapid response team. Eradication methods can include applications of insecticides or fungicides, or in some cases like oak wilt disease, tree removal. Okay, for your information, New York tree species that were rated highest for insect and disease vulnerability in that study that I mentioned were white ash, green ashes, and black ashes, you know, because of emerald ash borer, eastern hemlock, because of hemlock woolly adelgid, and the butternuts because of the butternut canker. So those trees you want to avoid. New York tree species that rated low for insect and disease vulnerability, and that should be considered for inclusion in your urban forest, are pitch pine, river birch, and black gum. But like with everything, always remember right tree, right place. So if these are good trees, if you put them in the right area in your urban community. There were many other species that also rated low for insect and disease vulnerability. And you can find those in that study. And I'll have the links provided to you. So you should get an email that gives you a link to that study. And since research papers such as the one I'm mentioning, they're outdated and old as new invasive species arrive, you should also stay up to date with the latest information from the following organizations. You can check out the USDA, New York DEC website, or the SLILO PRISM website for updated information on invasive species. All right, the third urban forest health strategy is increasing resilience to climate change. This strategy involves two that you were already familiar with, increasing species diversity. It also helps for resilience to climate change. Trees come in a range of drought and flood tolerance levels. Creating a more species diverse urban forest will minimize the risk of substantial tree canopy and ecosystem service loss by distributing the risks among multiple species. And that's really the key there was diversity, is that you don't want identical trees because they're susceptible to identical invasive pests and identical bad conditions. You want a diversity of all kinds of trees that aren't vulnerable to a certain invasive species or a certain condition. If you mix up your urban forest with a diversity of trees, you get resilience and you keep your benefits. I also mentioned increasing age diversity. Tree vulnerability varies with age. Younger trees tend to be more tolerant of storm-related winds, while older trees, because of their deep roots, tend to be more drought tolerant. By having a mix of age classes in your urban forest, you can distribute the risks among those age classes and retain the benefits related to having an urban forest. You should also plant climate change their adaptable trees. That is, plant trees that grow in a wide variety of conditions. You know, there are different moisture levels, temperatures, soils, etc. You know, so some trees there have an ability to tolerate from rowdy to wet conditions. If you can find those trees, definitely plant those trees because they're gonna they should be able to cope better with extremes that are being predicted by climate change. Select trees at the northern extent of their natural distribution. These should cope better with predicted warmer temperatures than those trees at the southern extent of their range. So don't plant trees that are mostly in Canada and just come down down into St. Lawrence County and no further, because as temperatures start to warm, those trees are going to start doing poorly. These qualities and others makes certain trees more climate adaptable than others. Good resources to find out how climate adaptable different tree species are include the USDA Forest Service Climate Change Atlas that I mentioned, and a paper you can see on the bottom right here that was published in New Forest by Potter, Crane, and Hargrove. When increasing species diversity, there's many trees that are species you can choose from, whether those are native or non-native, and they can all be placed in your urban environment according to their suitability. But I do ask that when you select trees for your urban community, that you do consider some of the native tree species for the following reasons. They support the local wildlife. According to the DEC, native trees provide food and shelter for native butterflies, insects, birds, and other animals, and are preferred by native animals. They are also low maintenance. Once again, according to the DEC, when compared to non-natives, natives require less water, little to no fertilizer, little to no pesticides, less pruning, and thus less of your time. They're also unlikely to be invasive or overly competitive with other native plants. That last one statement coming from the U.S. Forest Service. All right, before I end the presentation today, I also want you to be aware that most non-native tree species are not invasive and may be planted in your community to increase species diversity and resilience to invasive pest pathogens and climate change. But a few of them are, and these should be avoided. like I mentioned earlier, the IMAP invasive website that is managed by the New York Natural Heritage Program lists tree species that are known to spread into native communities, such as forests and riparian corridors, or ones that are being currently monitored for the level of invasiveness. Some examples of invasive tree species that you should avoid are tree of heaven, Norway maples, and black locusts. All right, well, the last area of the urban forest sustainability program that I would like to talk about today is the benefits of pocket parks, which I mentioned earlier. They're smaller than a regular park, usually a quarter acre or less in size, basically serving the same function as a park, and they have many benefits. They're often created in vacant lots by community groups, private entities, or foundations for the benefit of the neighborhood. They can be used as an event space, a play area, places to relax or meet friends, or for lunch breaks. The many benefits listed right here, they range from aesthetic, such as renovating rundown areas, to economic, such as saving additional money through increased ecosystem services like heating and cooling costs, to environmental, such as increased habitat for wildlife, to social benefits like decreased crime. Creating pocket parks in areas that were serving no purpose also increases the size of your urban forest. And if the strategies mentioned in the presentation are applied, will further increase your urban forest resilience to invasive pest pathogens and climate change. These parks do require community involvement to get established and keep maintained, but they are definitely worth considering for any community, and they're not just for big cities. If you have a small area that's not really performing a function, is more of an eyesore, you might want to consider putting one of these little pocket parks in. It'll definitely
Robert,
yeah.
Robert, this is I just want to make sure, I'm not sure your time limit.
Yeah.
We do have a few questions about the grant itself and whether it's going to be feasible for Canton. So are you off 1 hour exactly, or are you going to be able to save us some time?
I'm off as long as I am here, as long as you want me to be here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind, please.
Yep. Yep. And this concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know that was coming up. Thank you, and please visit the Celilo Prism website for the Urban Forest Sustainability Guide, which goes into more detail about increasing resiliency to urban forests and other urban sustainability resources. I hope this gave you a few ideas for increasing resiliency of Canton's urban forest. I didn't address it, but I can address what you were talking about the $5,000 reimbursement. I mean, you're absolutely qualified for it.
Well, one of the